Opening day tickets have gone on sale for the Toronto Blue Jays. A lot of people not happy with the price jumps. We'll break it all down as well. Bo Bichette has a message to the fans of Toronto. What is going on around the league? And roster invites have been sent out. Who made the cut?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day.
As always, I'm Brayden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Brayden5Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well. Our main Twitter account, at Locked On Jays, and anywhere else on social media, at Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining us. As always, a lot to dive into on today's episode. Like we said, we'll talk a little bit about the tickets and the schedule that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to have. As well, what's going on around the league, a few transactions and big transactions that could affect the Blue Jays and every other team in this league, and who got an invite to spring training. We'll break it all down as well. We'll go over the top 100 players in the MLB, which of the Toronto Blue Jays made the cut, which of them didn't, and we'll break it all down. Really a lot to get into on today's episode, Carter, but that's what you get for a Friday on Locked On Blue Jays, or any day at this point. Really, how are you doing, my man?
Feeling good, doing good. I think we can almost officially say that free agency is over, at least for the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't think there'll be any major signings coming from the Blue Jays front. There still are free agent options. The Framer Valdez saga is getting really interesting. It's looking more and more like it's going to be a a high AAV, low-term deal, so like a 1 or 2 year deal for Valdez. Hopefully, the common theme continues to go on, and nobody comes to the AL East. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good that baseball's coming up soon. World Baseball Classic, the Olympics, getting closer and closer to February. So in the sports world, it's going to be a lot of fun. You got NFL football again. So like in terms of sports, we're getting to the good stuff. We're getting really close to being one of the best times of the year.
Yeah, and you always talk about the fall and how great that is, but really when the World Baseball Classic is on and the Olympics, it really is fantastic. But Carter, let's jump right into one of the bigger stories, and not so much for the Toronto Blue Jays themselves, but for the fan base. The opening day tickets have gone on sale, and the queue was crazy. The prices were insane. And I got asked to go on Global News earlier yesterday, and they were asking me my thoughts and opinions because there are apparently a lot of people really not happy with the ticket prices for opening day. And will it get better throughout the season? Why is it so high? So Carter, let's break it all down here. I think as Blue Jays fans, we saw this coming, right? The Blue Jays signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a massive deal. They make a ton of free agent signings in Cody Ponce and Dylan Cease and Okamoto and Rogers, and you can keep going down the list. And they made it to the World Series. A lot of people want to go to Blue Jays games. So of course, the businessmen want to raise prices. What else is new? And it also comes down to supply and demand. So yes, I'm not thrilled that the ticket prices have risen, especially for opening day, but I get it as well. When you have a better product, you're going to be charging more. That's, basic economics, as much as it does suck, Carter. And I think my main takeaway and my main point of contention with the tickets is this was always meant to be a family sport, that you could pick up tickets and go to the ballpark with your family on a random, day or night or whatever it would be. And I think sports in general that's becoming a lot less likely. It has to be a full-blown outing at this point. It can't just be pick up tickets for $10 for everybody and go to the game. Or it's sad to say that you have to be in a pretty good position to be able to go to a few games a year, or even a game a year for some of you. So the good thing is with Rogers and the Blue Jays is that you are able to watch all of the games on TV if you have Sportsnet, and that's fantastic. But I feel like there are some people that are going to be missing out on the ballpark experience and being live at a game, and that does suck, right?
Oh, it absolutely does. Apple TV games, another reason that Blue Jays fans miss out on games. That definitely sucks. My dad absolutely hates Apple TV, and it makes perfect sense. There's so many different things now. There's so many different subscriptions that seems like everyone wants you to get, whether it's sports related, for watching shows, streaming shows, movies, all this different stuff. Like, why can't it just all be on Sportsnet? Again, it's a business. These guys want to make their money, but it's definitely frustrating. You brought up queues. Toronto Blue Jays fans, for better or worse, becoming experts on what queues are looking like, especially at the Rogers Center. And it's exactly like you said. I thought you were actually going to dive into a little bit of economics class here, Professor Brayden, on the case. Good thing you didn't. Yeah, believe it or not, you make the World Series, you get as close as you can to winning that World Series that is at the Rogers Center. You spend in free agency, as you said, and you have a pretty good team once again running it back into this 2026 season. Who would have thought tickets are going to be a little bit more expensive than they were at the start of 2025? I don't think this will persist over the full season. Like, there's going to be random Tuesdays where you probably still can get those $20 tickets in the 500s. You know, you can probably get different tickets for good deals last minute. You use Game Time all the time for things like that, especially for Jets games. Brayden was just at a Jets game here in Winnipeg. So there are opportunities to get tickets. If you want to go to opening day, that would, like, no matter what, even if your team's like not supposed to be that good, opening day is going to be more expensive than most other games. So I'm not surprised that the tickets went up, especially with the the production, the performance the Blue Jays had, just the marketing. You bring in a bunch of guys, you lose some guys as well. There's a lot of hype still around the Toronto Blue Jays. So I'm really hoping that it still is that family experience. You still are able to, bring your kids, your wife, whatever. There's 4 of you guys, and you don't have to pay, $150 for tickets, and then it's $10 for popcorn. If you want a beer, that's money. You want a water, whatever. There's so many added costs that already comes into going to the Rogers Center. And as soon as you have large prices, it prices out the real fans. It prices out the diehards, the people of the working class that really love the Toronto Blue Jays and watch, a ton of baseball games. So I don't think that will happen during the regular season. This team gets to the playoffs. That kind of automatically happens. Hopefully, they figure out some of the ticket scalping and the issues that Ontario had with selling those Toronto Blue Jays tickets. Hopefully, we're in a position where, that can even, like it's a possibility that can happen again. You got to think about it in the glass half full type of way, where at least that was a situation the Toronto Blue Jays had. But you just got to hope that with the Rogers success and with the Toronto Blue Jays success, they still have to remember that, hey, we still want true fans coming to these games. You still want to fill up the Rogers Center. When that center is filled up and that stadium is filled up, one of the best places to play baseball. So you don't want that atmosphere to kind of go to the wayside because you're outpricing your fans.
Yeah, so let us know if any of you were in the queue, in the login. If you got opening day tickets, we'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Let us know sort of how all of that experience was and how you feel that, about the ticket prices being rising. And it'll be every year no matter what. That's just how the economy is going here. But Carter, I also want to get into a little bit of the Toronto Blue Jays schedule, as the first 9 games of the schedule seem like a breeze for the Toronto. I don't want to say a breeze, but they're preferred teams that you would rather be playing. You got the Oakland Athletics, can't say that. The Athletics. Then you got the Colorado Rockies, and then you follow that up with the Chicago White Sox. So a very preferred way to start this year, especially for a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, who are known to usually have that little bit of a slow start, especially in guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Maybe this helps him find his footing early and he can get off on the good track. But Carter, I know that as we look forward to this schedule, there gets to points where, oh God, this might be a rough ride.
See, who would have thought that opening day tickets are going to be expensive at the Rogers Center when you have the Athletics in town? And being completely honest here, this is a really good lineup. The pitching still has a lot to be desired, but I'm just going to name some. I won't go through the entire thing, but Max Muncy's here now. He's on the Athletics. Nick Kurtz, obviously an unbelievable season. Shea Langeliers, Tyler Soderstrom, Brent Rooker. Jeff McNeil, another guy that is now on the Athletics, so that one's interesting. Jacob Wilson, Lawrence Butler. I said I wasn't going to name everybody. That's pretty much the whole lineup, though. But those are pretty well-known names. You don't have to be a diehard fan to know a lot of these names. And there's Denzel Clark, the Canadian, making circus catches in the outfield. That's a fun lineup. And maybe that's why, they're packing the Rogers Center and tickets are so high, because you want to watch the Athletics play baseball. To be completely honest, that's going to be a fun team to watch. I might tune into the odd Athletics game, depending on who they're playing. If they're playing the White Sox, probably not. But depending on who they're playing, I think that Athletics ball club will be a pretty fun baseball team to watch. But then you get the Rockies, you get the White Sox. You got to take advantage. You got to start the year hot. The Toronto Blue Jays last year had a very tough start to the season. Now you kind of have that as a reverse. Just going over after that White Sox series, you do have the Dodgers. That will be an early test to see how good of a baseball team this is. It will be April. So again, like how much can you take away from that? You'll have to see Minnesota, who just sold everybody, it seemed like, at this last trade deadline. The Brewers, who just traded Freddie Peralta, still going to be a good baseball team. But then you got the Diamondbacks, the Angels, the Guardians, and then the Red Sox to end it off. Pretty easy start to the season. You have a lot of favorable matchups in April. You have an opportunity to kind of get ahead of the field, because when June comes around, that is an absolute gauntlet, and I'll just name some teams in there. You got the Braves, who are probably going to have a bounce back. The Phillies are in here. The Yankees, you have the Astros, the Mets. A lot of good teams in June, so hopefully the Toronto Blue Jays can set themselves up. Kind of the reverse last year, where they just stayed afloat. They were just kind of flirting with that 500 record and then really exploded when they had a softer schedule. It's got to be the reverse this year. You got to start hot. You got to beat the bad teams early on, or what we assume are going to be the bad teams early on. It's baseball. Crazy things can happen. And then when you get to June, if you could play around that 500 baseball, hopefully you gave yourself enough of, a gap and enough of like a flotation device, just in case that you do have, some mishaps, you do have some valleys, people have, bad streaks like it happens in baseball. You face some good pitchers. You do have a little bit of that leeway, so you don't lose a lot of ground in the standings.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a really good test early on, and it will allow John Schneider to sort of fiddle with the lineup and see what works and what doesn't against maybe not your top end tier of baseball clubs. So I think that's a really good thing as well. Trying to figure out now, with obviously not having Bo Bichette, sort of trying to figure out where guys slot in, seeing how guys like Anthony Santander and George Springer will play this season. Will George regress? Will Santander have that bounce back? I think you're going to start to see those things very early. And so for John Schneider to be able to understand sort of what's going on and who he can rely on right out of the gate, I think is going to be a massive component to this team. But Carter, as you go throughout the schedule, it is pretty interesting. I want to give a shout out Jeff Carr, host of Locked On Reds. The Toronto Blue Jays finish up their regular season against the Reds, so we'll have to get Jeff on. He'll probably give us some great insight into that one when it comes to the end of the season. But that's a heck of a long way away, Carter. We still, we're still talking about the start of the regular season, and we haven't really even gone fully in depth on the World Baseball Classic yet.
We haven't had spring trades. 159 baseball games that will need to be played, and that's regular season baseball before we do have that series. Hopefully the Toronto Blue Jays can lock up the AL East, maybe lock up that bye once again, and then the Reds can discuss what their offseason plans are going to be at that time.
Yeah, that might be what you're seeing. As always, leave us your comments, your thoughts, your feelings, and everything we talk about. But we need to go around the league. But Carter's going to kick things off with a little bit of a message from Bo Bichette to the Toronto Blue Jays fans, the city of Toronto, the country of Canada. We'll get into all that on the other side. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life this year. TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. Wouldn't that be nice? Not having to sit down and stress over taxes. God, I'm thankful for TurboTax. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress of the guesswork. That's a big one for me. I never know what I have to put in, what documents I do need, what documents don't I need, and I end up getting either too much or not enough. At least I can just hand everything off. I can put it out of my mind and it'll be done for me. So it is a massive help. Me and Carter just had this conversation the other day. Said, oh, God, I guess we got to start thinking about taxes. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for your last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Again, that's TurboTax.com/local. So, Carter, just before we get into Bo Bichette and his message to Toronto, I'll throw it over to you for maybe a cool opportunity for everybody listening.
Yeah, we've talked about this opportunity before, but it is the Everydayer Club with the Locked On Blue Jays. That is obviously us. It does give you access to a bunch of bonus things. A little bit of a new membership gives us some insights. So bonus feeds, you get ad-free audio podcasts, you get a discount on exclusive merch, you can get discounts on other Everydayer Club memberships because we, again, love other sports. We're immersed right now in the NFL. The NHL is a little bit harder for us to watch because we are Canucks fans, and if you guys know anything about the NHL, that's not going very well. But we got experts all over the leagues, whether it's the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, any league that you are listening to. If there's a Locked On podcast, I would definitely encourage you guys to check that out. But we do have one of the last times probably we will talk about Bo Bichette. I say that all the time. Bo Bichette will be talked about probably for the next 3 years, to be completely honest, and it definitely will happen in June when the Blue Jays are playing the New York Mets. But this is a message from Bo Bichette to all Toronto Blue Jays fans, whether you're in Canada, out of Canada, if you're across the world, wherever you are. This is from Bo Bichette. So he says, "Dear Toronto Blue Jays fans, if I wasn't going to retire a Toronto Blue Jay, then I'm grateful that we had Game 7. The moment we shared in that game was just one detail away from all I could have wished for us together. I could not wish more that I delivered you a championship. I will carry your show of belief in me when I return for the World Series for the rest of my life. Thank you. You watched me grow up. You lived with my ups and downs, and you encouraged me anyway. Thank you. Toronto will forever be a piece of my heart. Love, Bo Bichette." Pretty heartfelt message, tough to read. I've been seeing a lot of montages with Bo Bichette, with highlights from his rookie season, from his best moments with the Toronto Blue Jays. For the first 2 hours, I was a little bit mad at Bo Bichette, a little bit mad about the situation. After that, you look at the contract, you realize what the situation was, you look at all the signs that we really saw, not only in this offseason, but leading up to this moment. You just got to feel happy for Bo Bichette, and you got to feel happy that we got to watch Bo Bichette in his early years with the Toronto Blue Jays just absolutely tear the cover off the baseball.
Yeah, I'm not quite over it yet, personally. I probably will never be. I think Carter, you just brought up the Canucks in the NHL or whatever, and I think of guys like Henrik Sedin and Daniel Sedin, right? The guys that stuck with their organization and what that does to a fan base, and guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. now, right? Pretty much saying that he's going to be a Toronto Blue Jay for life. You don't see that happen very much. And, I guess you got to really treasure the guys that do want to stick with your organization. So I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr., when all's said and done, may be one of the most loved, top 3 most loved Toronto Blue Jays players of all time. And it's for his commitment and his willingness to stay here and want to win here. And I know there was rumblings and conversations that have been had that said that Bo Bichette told players at his wedding that he was gone. And to me, I don't know. That sort of bothers me because obviously the decision was made long before this deal was ever signed that he was not going to be a Toronto Blue Jay, and we're over here sitting here debating and trying to figure out, will he come back? Does he deserve to come back? And all of this, when it was all sort of a moot point at the end. So sad to see him go. Nice message. But Carter, I did want to touch on one more thing in regards to Bo Bichette, and that's the fact that at his first media availability, a reporter asked him, "Do you consider this a one-year deal?" No answer from Bo Bichette. His agent jumped in rather quickly and sort of deferred the question, didn't really answer it. So, Carter, from that interview, did you get the feeling that maybe this is just a 1 year and Bo may take the opt-out and go play somewhere else and feel out how much he likes the Mets and then makes his decision there and then? I guess that's the perk of having opt-outs, right?
It's exactly what Alex Bregman did with the Red Sox, and we thought that was a pretty good situation. It depends on how good Bo Bichette is with the Mets. And I saw some lineup projections. Again, this is just early on. We're in January talking right now, so things can change. But it looked like it was going to be Lindor, then Juan Soto, then Bo Bichette. So he should have a lot of opportunities to be that clutch player, to have runners in scoring position, to have runners on base. You should be in a position where the numbers, especially the numbers that a lot of people look at, the average, the RBIs, home runs, whatever. For teams, they look at more advanced numbers, obviously, but these numbers definitely help your case. Bo Bichette is in a very good spot where he could lead the MLB in hits. He could probably be up there in RBIs. The home runs won't really come, but he could be one of the better run producers in all of baseball, and that could definitely drive up the value of his contract. So $42 million, tough thing to, put to the wayside, but if you have, that certainty in a contract that's 7-8 years that Bo Bichette was looking for, that might be an inclination to sign that deal and, have a little bit more certainty in his career where there is a lot of uncertainty with his range, his mobility, and how he is going to age. For the Toronto Blue Jays, the last thing I'll kind of bring up the contract talks with that and about the wedding and all that kind of stuff. I think we knew just by how aggressive they were in the pursuit of Kyle Tucker and just like the lack of news that we saw with Bo Bichette throughout the entire offseason. I think we had a pretty good idea that Bo was not going to return. And just with a lot of the contract offers that were coming out, I think if the Toronto Blue Jays wanted to sign Bo Bichette long-term, they probably would have tried a little bit harder around the time they signed Vladdy, even before when they signed Vladdy. I think there was a lot of projectability issues with Bo Bichette, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays and how much they do value defense, how much they value WAR in totality. Bo Bichette can be a good WAR player. He can win you 3, 4, maybe even 5 games just with his bat, to be completely honest. But again, when you're looking at that longer-term contract, it's not an issue in his age 28, 29, 30 season. It's an issue, maybe when he's 33, 34 years old. And for $42 million AAV, the Blue Jays were just never going to match that. I think they probably offered him something along the lines of like a 3-year, maybe $100 million deal. So I just never think that it was going to work with both sides, with the Toronto Blue Jays and Bo Bichette, not only during this offseason, but honestly before then as well.
Carter, just sort of continuing on with the Mets as they continue to make moves. They acquire fielder Luis Robert Jr. from the White Sox, and the White Sox receive 2 young players from the Mets. Honest to God, I hate to say this, it's nice to see the Mets going for it. This is a team that I just feel like could never get out of the slums a little bit. It's been a long time since we've seen a great Mets team, and they have a lot of talent on that team, but now they're just adding to it. They are just compiling players right now. So are they trying to rival the Dodgers? Are they trying to make them the bigger team than the Yankees? This offseason debatably might have done that. And I'm very interested to see what the Mets team looks like around the trade deadline. Are they a competitive team that's going to be pushing for the World Series? I think it's hard to look at them right now and say, absolutely not, the Mets are going to Met. But this looks like a good team on paper, Carter.
This is a team that's definitely focused on just winning their own division. They got the Phillies in that division, a team that is going to be good once again. So they're definitely not worried. They are worried about the Dodgers in a sense, but they got to, take care of business in their own division. That will be their number one thing. Getting Freddie Peralta, which we'll dive into a little bit after this, I think that was the big move that they had. It was a crazy offseason for Mets fans. You lose Alonso, you lose Diaz, you lose a ton of players. You lose Brendan Nimmo, sort of, in a trade. You get Marcus Semien back. What a weird trade that was. But at one point, the Mets really didn't do anything, and it looked like Steve Cohen was just kind of sitting on his hands. And then it looked like they were the favorites to get Kyle Tucker. You get a quick pivot to Bo Bichette, and then bada bing, bada boom, a bunch of stuff happens. And now you got Luis Robert Jr. and Freddie Peralta on your baseball team. This is a very good lineup. This is a lineup with a lot of upside, a lot of depth in this lineup as well. Pitching was going to be a little bit of an issue. They do have David Peterson. They have Senga there as well. They have some guys, Sean Manaea, I believe, is still there. So they have some guys that can eat some innings, some guys that can definitely keep you in baseball games. But now that they got Freddie Peralta, albeit a big haul to get back, Jet Williams a part of that trade. So it's a tough haul to give back. But at this point now, the Mets are trying to win. They're trying to win baseball games. Was Williams going to have an impact on this Mets team with Lindor playing shortstop with the logjam you already have in that infield? There just wasn't a way that these guys were going to get the playing time. So I'm never going to be upset about teams moving on from prospects. And this Mets team, especially this offense, is probably going to be a whole lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, Carter, it is. And I think a great move. And, we could sit here and talk a ton about Freddie Peralta and sort of what he could bring to the Mets. But, hey, this isn't a Mets podcast, but that's what this segment sort of turned into because they made a ton of moves. Carter, I did want to touch on this just before we hit the break. And we'll probably talk about a bunch of things throughout the weeks and what other teams look like and how they compare, whatever else. But the MLB's top 100 players came out, and the Blue Jays had 4 players slotted in the top 100. Some guys may shock you, Carter. I'll get your thoughts and opinions on this. Obviously, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does crack the top 10 at the number 10 spot. How do you feel about that sort of positioning for him?
I think it's good for a first baseman. It's tough to have a first baseman ranked in the top 5. Vladdy didn't have the greatest regular season. The postseason was phenomenal, as a lot of you guys obviously remember. So I think that's a pretty good spot for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's definitely not something that I would complain about.
No, absolutely not. I think you're just thrilled that the Blue Jays have a top 10 player in the league. But slotting in at number 47 is George Springer after the season he had. I think that's probably a pretty fair spot to put him. It was a fantastic season, but now can he roll that over? Can he continue with that sustained success and maybe not to that level, but even a little bit of a drop off? And I think that's a great spot for George.
It was going to be tough for George Springer to get higher than that. A lot of time with these these lists, they don't just go off the previous year. They kind of go off the last 3 or 4. A lot of the time, what we do with evaluating players as well, can't just go off of one season.
Yeah.
You gotta base it off of previous history. You can't just base it off the smaller sample size. The bigger the sample size, the better, and that's what they do a lot of times with these lists. George Springer has been a very good player in Major League Baseball for a very long time. The season that he had in 2025 will go down as one of my favorite seasons of just watching anyone on the Toronto Blue Jays, especially at this current time in my life. There was the 2015, 2016. I was 13 and 14 at that time. Not young, I remember it very clearly, but I can appreciate it on a different level now, having a podcast, watching every single game, game in, game out, every single pitch. So I can appreciate it a little bit more, George Springer, in his age 35 season. But I expect it to, I do not expect George Springer to increase on this list. I don't expect him to bump up at all. If that happens, absolute ridiculousness. And if I remember correctly, I didn't see the whole list, but I'm pretty sure that Springer was 1 spot ahead of Bo Bichette. So if you want a little moral victory, I think you have one there.
There's one. And 2 more guys rounding it out, Carter. I'll name both of them. Alejandro Kirk at 74. Great spot for Alejandro
Love to see the
Kirk.
Kirk respect.
A very underrated, underrespected guy in the totality, his defensive ability, and honestly, even his offense, when he is cooking, Alejandro Kirk is a fantastic player, and the contract the Blue Jays got him on is outstanding. And rounding it out, number 100 on MLB's top 100 players, Dylan Cease, the Toronto Blue Jays big free agent signing, Carter, breaking the top 100, and I think he can only go up from there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, coming off a year where a lot of the underlying metrics were in Dylan Cease's favor. You got to work with Pete Walker. You got to work with the Blue Jays pitching staff. You got to hope that the sky is the limit for Dylan Cease. So at 100, hasn't played on the Toronto Blue Jays yet, hasn't thrown a pitch for the Toronto Blue Jays. I'll be okay with that, but I'm hoping that it can get better, especially this first season with all the projections and all the aspirations the Toronto Blue Jays do have. And with Alejandro Kirk, you probably don't know this off the top of your head, but I would love to see in terms of the other catchers in the league, where he would rank. I would assume that Cal Raleigh was ahead of him. Yes, based off history, I think Will Smith would be as well. So I'm hoping that he was either 3 or 4 on that list, which I think is a pretty good spot for Alejandro Kirk. I tried to not let the Jays bias. You're untrue for catchers, but honestly, there isn't a lot of very good catchers in the game of baseball right now. There's a lot of platoons, not a lot of guys that you go out and that can go out there and carry an offense, really lead a ball club. You see that with Cal Raleigh. You see that as well with Alejandro Kirk, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that this isn't the first time, or isn't the last time, sorry, it is the first time, but probably not the last time that we're going to see Alejandro Kirk on a top 100 list.
Carter, Cal Raleigh comes in at number 4 on the top 100 list. So very high for him. It was a great season, one of the best offensive catcher season of all time, debatably. Just a fantastic numbers all around for Cal Raleigh. I think number 4 is a little bit crazy personally, but good for him. It was a great season.
When you have he hit 60 home runs when you carry a Mariners offense, and then you're everyday catching, you're playing a ton of baseball games, one of the
leading
hardest.
The defense.
Yeah, so you got to give the guy credit. An unbelievable season. As much as I don't hate the Mariners, but you have the rivalry, so you gotta sometimes pray on their downfall, especially when the Toronto Blue Jays are playing them. You definitely see the rivalry whether it's on social media and our comment sections at the games as well, with how close Seattle is to the rest of Canada. So it's a fun rivalry, but it's crazy to see what Cal Raleigh did. Not only Cal Raleigh, but obviously when you hit 60 home runs for a ball club, that is going to matter immensely, and it was a big reason why Seattle got to the ALCS.
Just before we wrap up, Carter, we want to get to the non-roster invites for the Blue Jays spring training. We'll do all of that when we come back. All right, who got the invite? I won't go over everybody, but I'll go over some of the bigger names and some of the more interesting ones, Carter. I'm going to start here with a guy we know very well. Yariel Rodriguez gets a non-roster invite to the Toronto Blue Jays 2026 spring training. What are your thoughts on that one?
That's going to be one of the storylines I'm going to be watching throughout spring training. Another thing that I will be watching this is from Francis Romero. Yariel Rodriguez will join Team Cuba for the 2026 World Baseball Classic after receiving approval from the Toronto Blue Jays. So I think, honestly, for me, the World Baseball Classic is going to be more of a tell than, spring training is against random AA guys, high A guys, AAA guys, the odd MLB guy in there as well. But the World Baseball Classic has some of the best baseball players from, believe it or not, around the world. So with Yariel Rodriguez, if you can see him be effective and, get some swing and miss and get some outs in the World Baseball Classic, that is going to be something that is definitely carried with some validity and hopefully can help him gather some confidence going into this upcoming season.
Carter, just to name a few other guys, Gage Stanifer gets an invite. Actually, we were supposed to have Gage on the podcast. We're going to try to work on that for you guys sort of throughout the rest of this offseason, try to get back in contact with him. A very interesting one there. Just Charles McAdoo as well, a guy that the Toronto Blue Jays acquired via trade.
The IKF trade.
The IKF trade, that's right. And then IKF, obviously rejoins the Blue Jays last season. So very interesting on those two guys. Ardre Schreck is another guy that I'm very interested to see sort of what he can bring to a spring training.
He flew up the leaderboards for the prospect rankings last year for the Toronto Blue Jays, and rightfully so, had a very good year.
Yeah, super good year. So there's a lot of big names on this list.
Arjun Namala, that's one guy that had a little bit of a down year. I want to see what he can do. Not going to be on the Toronto Blue Jays, obviously, but I would like to see what he can do against, some good talent. Just to see Arjun play. I wish I had watched more Arjun tape. But again, with the Toronto Blue Jays playing 162, now that, we're going to be watching those games anyway, love to see Arjun tear the cover off the baseball and hopefully show some flash defensively as well.
And Carter, that's exactly where I was going to go next, was Arjun Namala, because how big is it for him that Bo Bichette is no longer on this team? Yes, you have Andres Jimenez, but if you can get a shortstop that comes in, maybe can play a little two-bag, that can absolutely crush the baseball, this makes Arjun Namala's path to the MLB a lot easier than it would have been if Bo Bichette was still on this team.
Yeah, and then there's JoJo Parker kind of creeping up behind him as well. So it's a blessing in disguise for some players. I think a lot of Toronto Blue Jays fans would definitely prefer Bo Bichette to still be on this baseball team to, compared to what Arjun Namala could be, to what JoJo Parker could be. But in theory, it does make it a little bit easier for some of these younger guys to find some playing time with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm just going to bring up a couple more. Josh Kasevich is a guy that was rumored to come up, or was projected, I should say, to come to the Toronto Blue Jays in 2025. Hasn't really put it all together quite yet. That will be one to follow. And then Ryan Jennings, another guy that could have been in the mix for the bullpen for the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays. They did have a lot of depth. Paxton Schultz, a guy that's no longer on the Toronto Blue Jays, was obviously very good. Guys like Brendan Little early on the season. Braden Fisher took a lot of strides as well, so didn't need him then. Could be another option. And then who's not on here because he's on the 40-man roster already, but Ricky Tiedemann, if we're talking about straight spring training storylines, I think that one actually would be the number one, even in front of Yariel Rodriguez, because this is a guy that has been a top prospect on the Toronto Blue Jays for a very long time. But unfortunately, due to a lot of injuries, knock on wood, we haven't been able to see him. So hopefully, not even looking for the performance as much. Let's just hope for a healthy spring training from Ricky Tiedemann.
Oh, goodness gracious. Please, God, no injuries for Ricky Tiedemann. That's all I'm praying for. Chad Dallas, Cutter Coffee. There's a ton of guys in this list. Maybe we'll put it out in the next few days for you guys so that you guys can see. I might throw a retweet out there so you guys can find it on the Twitter. Just that in case, some of the guys we missed, maybe you really like one of them. So again, Locked On Jays on Twitter. I'll throw that out Friday morning for you guys so you guys can take a real close look at the list. But as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We still have a ton more to cover, and we will get to everything next week. We sort of want to start to get into what this team is going to look like. And now that the free agency for the Toronto Blue Jays is getting, pretty much done, we can start to do that. So again, as always, thank you guys. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio, we really appreciate it. And Carter, one last time, I'll throw it over to you. Let the people know.
Yeah, I got two things, actually. I'll start with the Everydayer Club. You guys should know at this point, a very good opportunity for you guys to check out our content. You get some bonus content from our national broadcasts. You get ad-free audio. You get ad-free podcasts. It's a pretty good deal you got going on for $5, and we would appreciate it a ton. And the last thing, we talked a lot about trades. We didn't talk about this one. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but a lot of rumors from the Nationals. CJ Abrams possibly being traded. And then you do get one, Mackenzie Gore going to the Texas Rangers for a boatload of prospects, but it makes a lot of sense. Mackenzie Gore, a former very early round pick, first round pick, very early. I think it was the number 4 pick. So with Mackenzie Gore, a guy that has a lot of upside, we've seen it at times, him put it together. We'll have to see for the Texas Rangers if they can kind of figure out how to keep him consistent and hopefully bolster that rotation. That did lose a few pieces this offseason.
Yeah, Carter, thanks for bringing that up. A guy that I forgot about in around the league. I got screenshots and a bunch of stuff in my notes, and sometimes stuff gets lost in the weeds. But thanks for that. As always, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys back on Monday.